For the longest time, I swore off even thinking about getting involved with another woman. My divorce from Lisa was nothing short of a battlefield. After 15 years together, you'd think we could at least part ways with some dignity, but no. She went for the jugular. First, she tried to cut me off from my kids, Adam and Sophie, as if I'd ever let that happen. I was the one who'd been there for every scraped knee, every science project, every tearful bedtime story. I loved those kids more than life itself. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she turned her sights on my mom, Donna. Lisa actually tried to sue her over the house my parents worked their entire lives to pay off. I mean, how low can someone go? That house had been in our family for decades. My dad had passed away a few years earlier, and Mom was all I had left of him. Watching her go through that stress because of Lisa's greed. It was enough to make my blood boil. 15 years of marriage had turned into 15 years of wasted effort, or at least that's how it felt. We'd started off as those starry-eyed college sweethearts everyone envied. I was 22 when we got married, young, dumb, and absolutely convinced we were going to be one of those rare couples who made it through thick and thin. By the time I turned 30, the cracks were already showing. We argued constantly, about money, the kids, the way I worked too much or she spent too much. The love we'd started with got buried under resentment and exhaustion until it wasn't there at all. By the time we split, I wasn't just done with Lisa, I was done with women altogether. The thought of opening myself up to someone new, of letting them into my life, felt like signing up to get hurt all over again. I told myself I didn't need that kind of pain. But here's the thing, nature doesn't care about your resolutions. I might have sworn off relationships, but I was still a man in my 40s with a pulse. I wasn't some old geezer sitting on his porch with a cane. I had needs, plain and simple. And after months of living in what felt like emotional purgatory, those needs started to creep up on me. At first, I tried to ignore them. I threw myself into work, picking up extra hours and taking on more projects than any sane person should. I coached Adam's Little League team, helped Sophie with her school play rehearsals, and even started fixing up old furniture in the garage to keep my hands busy. But no matter how much I tried to fill my time, there was this nagging voice in the back of my mind, this reminder that I was still human. The problem was, I didn't want anything serious. I couldn't stomach the idea of another relationship. I wasn't looking for love or someone to build a life with. I just wanted, I wanted someone young and vibrant, someone who could remind me what it felt like to be alive again. I didn't need deep conversations or promises of forever, I just needed to feel something, anything, that wasn't this dull ache of loneliness. It wasn't an easy realization to come to. I'd been raised in a small Midwestern town where respect for women was drilled into you from day one. My mom taught me to treat every woman like a lady, and my dad made it clear that love was something sacred. The idea of seeking out anything casual, anything purely physical, felt like crossing some kind of invisible moral line. But I wasn't looking to disrespect anyone. I wasn't out to hurt feelings or make promises I couldn't keep. I just wanted a connection, even if it was fleeting. That's when I started thinking about how to put myself out there again. It wasn't like I could just walk into a bar and strike up a conversation. I'd been out of the dating game for over a decade, and honestly, I wasn't even sure how it worked anymore. Dating apps felt like a foreign concept, something the younger crowd used to swipe left and right like they were ordering pizza. Still, I figured it was worth a shot. It was one of those warm summer evenings that felt like it was made for unwinding. The air had just the right amount of humidity to keep the night from getting too chilly, and the bar I'd chosen was a cozy little spot tucked away from the busier parts of town. It wasn't crowded that night, and I liked it that way. Most of the regulars were hanging out on the patio, enjoying their drinks under the soft glow of string lights. I was inside, sitting at the counter, savoring the quiet and the faint hum of distant conversation. My buddy, Mark, was supposed to meet me there, but he'd cancelled at the last minute. I wasn't in the mood to head home just yet, so I ordered a beer and sat there alone, lost in my thoughts. I hadn't been sitting there long when my solitude was interrupted by a voice behind me, a slightly slurred, undeniably feminine voice. "Is this seat taken?" I turned around to see who was speaking. Standing there was a stunning blonde, no older than 21, wearing a black miniskirt and a snug t-shirt that teased just enough to leave something to the imagination. She had the kind of confident, carefree demeanor that made her stand out, even in a room full of people. I gestured to the seat next to me. "Go ahead," I said. She sat down, even though there were plenty of other open seats. "I'm Jessica," she said, smiling at me. "And you?" I introduced myself, a little unsure of what to make of her approach. Women didn't usually walk up to me out of the blue like this, and I'll admit, my first thought was skepticism. Something about it felt almost too bold, like something out of a cheesy movie. Maybe it was my past experiences making me cautious, but I couldn't help but wonder if she had some kind of ulterior motive. She must have sensed my hesitation because she chuckled softly and said, "Don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you anything or ask for anything. I'm just bored, and you looked like you could use some company." Her honesty caught me off guard, and before I knew it, we were talking. At first, it was the usual small talk, where we were from, what brought us to this bar, the kind of casual conversation you can have with a stranger without giving too much away. But as the night went on, I realized there was more to Jessica than I'd initially thought. We talked about everything, music, travel, the weird quirks of life that make it interesting. She had a sharp wit and a way of looking at the world that was refreshingly different. She was beautiful, yes, but she was also smart and genuinely interesting. After a while, she suggested we take a walk along the nearby riverfront. I wasn't sure what to make of her at first, but by then, she had me intrigued enough to say yes. The embankment was quiet, the kind of peaceful you only get late at night when most of the city is asleep. The moonlight reflected off the water, casting a soft glow over everything. We walked for hours, talking and laughing like we'd known each other forever. At some point, I realized I wasn't just enjoying her company, I was starting to feel something more. It was strange because I hadn't let myself feel anything for a woman in a long time. But with Jessica, it felt easy. Natural. As the night turned into morning, she leaned in and said, "What do you say we go back to your place?" By then, the beer buzz had worn off, and I knew exactly what she was suggesting. And to be honest, I wasn't against it. Not in the slightest. What followed was one of the most passionate nights I'd had in years. We spent the entire next day in bed, only getting up for the occasional snack or drink. By the time she left that evening, I realized something that both excited and terrified me: I was falling for her. Over the next few days, we texted constantly, silly jokes, random thoughts, and those little messages that feel like stolen moments in the middle of a busy day. It felt like I was back in high school, experiencing that giddy, butterflies in your stomach kind of infatuation. We started seeing each other regularly. For the first time in years, I was part of something that felt like a relationship. Jessica would stay over at my place, and we'd spend weekends exploring the city, going to restaurants, or just hanging out. We even went on a couple of short weekend getaways, nothing fancy, just little trips to nearby towns to get away from it all. She had this incredible way of making me feel alive again. I'd forgotten what it was like to laugh that hard or to feel that kind of warmth from someone else. Still, there were things about her that puzzled me. For one, she always insisted on paying for herself, even when I tried to cover the bill. At first, I thought it was just her being polite, but as time went on, it started to feel like there was something more to it, like she was keeping a part of herself separate from me. But I didn't push. I didn't want to ruin what we had by overthinking it. For 6 months, we were happy, and for the first time in years, so was I. It was a quiet evening, the kind that usually ended with Jessica and me sharing a drink or talking about everything and nothing. I had offered to pick her up from work that night, eager to spend a little more time together before calling it a day. The roads were relatively empty, the streetlights casting long shadows on the asphalt. I was humming along to the radio when, out of nowhere, a massive black Jeep swerved in front of me, cutting me off so sharply I had to slam on the brakes. The screech of my tires echoed through the street, and my heart raced with adrenaline. Before I could even process what had just happened, the Jeep came to an abrupt stop ahead of me. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped a man who looked like he belonged in the NBA, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and an expression that screamed trouble. I glanced at Jessica, who was sitting next to me, looking as surprised as I felt. Part of me wanted to let it go, to just drive around the guy and be done with it. But another part of me, the part that didn't want to seem like a coward in front of her, told me I couldn't back down. So, I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The guy towered over me, his shoulders practically blocking out the streetlights. His eyes were cold and piercing, and there was an anger in them that felt disproportionate to the situation. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I also wasn't going to let him intimidate me. Before I could say a word, Jessica opened her door and got out as well. She didn't hesitate for a second, she walked right past me, heading straight for the guy like she had some kind of score to settle. "Jessica, wait," I started, but she ignored me completely. The guy's expression shifted slightly when he saw her, but not in a way that gave me any comfort. There was recognition there, and something else I couldn't quite place. "What the hell is this about?" I muttered under my breath, still trying to figure out what was happening. And then, before I could react, Jessica swung her hand back and slapped him across the face. Hard. The sound of it echoed in the stillness of the street, and for a moment, everything seemed frozen. The guy didn't say a word. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he grabbed her by the arm with one hand and shoved her toward the passenger side of his Jeep. "Hey!" I shouted, stepping forward instinctively. But before I could take another step, his other hand shot out, catching me square in the jaw with a punch so heavy it knocked me off balance. I stumbled back, the world spinning for a moment before I hit the ground. By the time I scrambled to my feet, dazed and furious, Jessica was already in his car. The guy climbed back into the driver's seat without so much as a glance in my direction, and the Jeep roared to life. I stood there, helpless, as the taillights disappeared into the distance. My heart was pounding, my jaw ached, and my mind was racing with questions. Who was this guy? Why had Jessica gone with him so willingly? And most importantly, what the hell had I just gotten myself into? It was a full week before I heard from Jessica again. 7 days of silence, during which my mind ran in circles, coming up with every possible explanation for what had happened that night. At first, I was worried, really worried. I even considered going to the police to file a missing person report, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the nagging feeling that Jessica wasn't exactly who I thought she was. When she finally did get in touch, it wasn't with an apology or an explanation. Instead, her tone was casual, like nothing unusual had happened. We met up later that evening, and that's when the truth finally came out. Jessica wasn't who I thought she was, not even close. She wasn't single, for starters. She was married. Married. And not only that, but she had 3 kids. 3. I sat there, stunned, as she casually explained the life she'd been keeping hidden from me. Apparently, she lived in a massive house, practically a mansion, by the sound of it. Her husband was wealthy, the kind of man who could afford to give her everything she wanted and more. She didn't work because she needed to, she worked because she was bored. And she cheated on her husband for the same reason. Her husband, she explained, knew about her affairs. He tolerated them, up to a point, because he loved her. But once a year, like clockwork, he'd lose his temper and deal with her lovers. That's what had happened with the guy in the Jeep. It wasn't a random encounter or a case of road rage. It was her husband, coming to collect her, to mark his territory, and to remind her, and anyone else, who was in charge. She told me all of this like it was the most normal thing in the world, like it was just a part of her life, no different from picking up groceries or paying the bills. I sat there, staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one sitting in front of me. "So that's it?" I finally asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. "You're just, okay with this?" She shrugged, a small, almost sad smile playing on her lips. "It's not ideal," she admitted. "But it's my life. He loves me, and I love him, in my own way. We have an understanding." An understanding? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd spent months with her, thinking we were building something real, only to find out I was just another name on a long list. "You could have told me," I said, anger creeping into my voice. "You could have been honest from the start." "I didn't want to scare you off," she said simply. "And besides, I liked you. I still do." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Part of me wanted to walk away right then and there, to leave her and her twisted version of a love story behind. But another part of me, foolish, hopeful, wondered if there was still something worth salvaging. I didn't learn the full truth from Jessica herself, no, that came from her husband. One day, out of the blue, he showed up at my door. I wasn't sure what to expect when I opened it, but it certainly wasn't the man standing there. He was tall and imposing, with an air of calm authority about him. Despite everything I'd imagined, he wasn't angry or confrontational. In fact, he seemed almost polite, even cordial. "I'm here for Jessica's things," he said, his tone measured. "I figured it'd be better if I came myself." I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. This was the man I'd unknowingly wronged, the husband of the woman I'd spent months falling for. Yet, he didn't seem angry. If anything, he looked tired. As I let him in, he started to explain everything. It turned out he wasn't the monster I'd imagined him to be. He was a decent guy, honest, straightforward, and surprisingly understanding. He told me about their life together, how Jessica had always been restless, how her need for excitement and novelty had led her to stray time and time again. He wasn't blind to it, but he loved her in a way that made him willing to forgive her flaws. "She's a complicated woman," he said, almost wistfully. "Loyalty isn't her strong suit, but she has a way of making you fall for her, doesn't she?" I didn't answer, but he didn't seem to expect me to. Instead, he handed me a bottle of whiskey, good whiskey, the kind you don't find at the corner store, and apologized. Apologized. For what, I wasn't entirely sure. Maybe for Jessica, maybe for the mess I'd gotten tangled up in. "I know you probably hate me," he said as he packed up her things, "but you should know, you weren't just another fling for her. She talked about you differently. I think, in her own way, she really cared about you." It was a strange moment, hearing those words from the man whose wife I'd unknowingly been involved with. It didn't make the betrayal any easier to swallow, but it did make me see things in a different light. Over the next few weeks, he reached out a couple of times. He called once, left a message another time, and even stopped by again, though I didn't answer the door. I appreciated the effort, I suppose, but I couldn't bring myself to engage with him any further. The whole situation was too messy, too raw. Looking back, though, I can say this much, the experience taught me a lesson I'll never forget. For all her lies and her double life, Jessica showed me something important. She made me realize how much I value honesty, even in the most unconventional of ways. I'll admit, I've developed a certain respect for women who are upfront about who they are and what they want, even if society looks down on them. At least they don't lie. At least they don't pretend to be something they're not. It was a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn. And as strange as it sounds, I think I'm better for it.